Okay. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Jeff Hamlin. I am the Director of Learning and Development here at the Climate Corporation. And thanks for taking some time out of your morning to join our webinar today, covering a couple of key topics. And those are how to first import data to the FieldView platform in terms of getting data into the system that you may not have collected live in the field. And then secondly, how to fix data that you may have in the system where maybe something went wrong in collecting it and the hybrid name is wrong or the field that the data is associated with is wrong and you need to get it in the right place. We do have some tools available for you to be able to fix up some data, and I want to show you how some of that works as well. So that said, I'll just go ahead and jump in here pretty shortly. Just a couple of notes before I get started. Number one, I have muted the phone lines here just to keep the background noise down on the call. But as always, the most important thing that I can do on any of these webinars is answer your questions about how to effectively use the FieldView platform. So if you do have really questions about anything FieldView related, it could be outside of these importing and fixing data topics, please feel free to take advantage of this time to type those questions in to the chat or the question and answer sections here of the WebEx, and I will make sure that I stay on the line as long as necessary to answer any of those questions that do come in, either as we go or at the end of the presentation today. And I think that's probably about it. So let me go ahead and just jump in. We'll get this started and get everyone back to their day. Hopefully weather is getting better wherever you are. I know certainly a lot of us have faced some challenges with weather this spring, and I hope that that gets better soon for everyone. But let's get started. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about importing data to the system. And what's the purpose of this? Well, it's really this all my data in one place concept. If we're going to learn anything from all the data that we collect on farm, step one is getting all that data into a common platform where we can see it side by side and have access to tools to analyze it. But if the data is staying in the monitor or we've got it in 5 different software systems, well, there's not a whole lot that we can do to learn from that data. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can help you get your data from all the different places it may live today into one single platform fairly easily, which is Climate FieldView. And how we're going to talk about that, well, there's 3 different ways really that we can get data in to the FieldView platform. Number one, we can collect it live in the field from what we call connected cabs using either a 2020 or our Climate FieldView Drive, that little hockey puck. That's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the other 2 ways that we can get data into the system where the data has already been collected and it's either in a monitor and on a thumb drive that we need to upload it into the system, or it's in some other third-party software system when we want to transfer and move it over to the FieldView platform. Those are the 2 ways that we're going to talk about getting data into the system today. That data that's already been collected, you have it somewhere on your farm, but now we want to move it into the FieldView platform. Now, what does that look like? Well, this is one extreme example, but this is a farmer that we were working with who took the time to collect all those thumb drives and data cards from various monitors that he'd had on the farm over the year. And he imported all of his historical data back to 1996 for at least this field. I'm not sure if he did it for all of his fields. But this is really the power that we can put in your hands, where now instead of having paper records and thumb drives and things that contain all of your farm data that maybe you can find if you take the time to search around and do enough digging, you can instead carry around with you on your mobile phone. So you have it at all times, every planting, spray, harvest map that has ever been created on your farm going back to 1996 or even earlier if you have that data available and have the time to invest in uploading that data to the system. So this is what we want to have for you. We want you to have all this data at your fingertips on your phone so you can always look back and say, hey, what did we do in this field in 2016? And what were the yields? And how did that trial of that particular fungicide work out? And what was the yield advantage we got? You'll have that data available to you if we take the time to upload to the farm, and you'll never lose it. It'll always be there on your phone. You can share it with your agronomist. your brother-in-law, whoever you might want to see that data. And this is what we're trying to get to. And if anyone does take the time to upload data that goes back further than 1996, or anyone can beat this, please do send me a note with a little screenshot. I'd love to see these stories of success where people are able to really take advantage of the system and put their entire farm history on their phone. Okay, so that said, let's go ahead and just jump into a demonstration. I'm going to get into my climate webpage and show you exactly how this works and some of the ins and outs of it and some of the details that maybe need some clarification. So let me just go ahead and flip over and start sharing my web page, and you should be able to, in a minute, see my climate account. So what I've done here is I have gone to www.climate.com, and this is where we're going to do all of our data inbox, data importing work. So we do have the Black app, and we have the Cab app, and we have our website, climate.com. And so I know there's a few different places that you can go to do things and look at data in the Climate Field View platform. But when we're talking about importing data, you're going to want to be at a computer on a web browser. This is going to be the best place to do data import responsibility. So go to a computer, go to climate.com, log in, and this is what you see. One other thing I'll mention here about the web page of climate.com. It does work best if you are using the Google Chrome browser. There are various browsers that you can use on your computer, from Internet Explorer to Firefox, or if you're on a Mac, Safari. But Google Chrome, take the time to download it. Just go to Google, search for Google Chrome in your browser. Download the Google Chrome browser and use that as your default. It does tend to work better with a lot of these mapping applications. It displays things quicker, and it doesn't run into some of the errors that some of the other browsers can have. So highly recommend using Google Chrome. Take the time to install it if you're going to be doing some data inbox work. So now that I'm logged in, this is what we see. And what we want to talk about here is that data inbox, moving data into Climate Field View. So how do we do that? Well, when we're on the web page, we want to use the import button here at the top of the screen. So if I click on import, it's going to take me to the data inbox page. And this is where we go ahead and we import our old data that may exist in a lot of different forms around the farm, whether they're on thumb drives or in other software systems. This is the page from which we can move that data. Now, this page has a lot of really helpful tools on it to help us figure out how to move the data from the place that it is today into Field View. And I'll talk through a couple of these first before we get into the actual importing process. So the first one is there's this check your file compatibility link right in the middle of the screen. I'm going to click on that and show you what's behind it, because this is extremely helpful as we start thinking about how we're going to move our data from wherever it exists today. So if I click this check your file compatibility, it's going to take me over to part of our Climate Field View Knowledge Center, where we've got details on all the different types of files that can be imported to the Field View platform. So these are the files that are compatible with Data Inbox. And you can scroll through this list and you can start to see what they are. And so basically, if you have Ag Leader YM2000 files, the yield files can be imported, but the as applied and the as planted can't. Those files have a .yld extension. It is live right now. We don't have a guide expressly telling you how to do this. These are some older kind of Ag Leader files, not a lot of those in the market. But if you do have those, yield will work. And if you have any questions about it, you can call our support team, and they'll be able to help you figure out how to make sure that that does import properly. Now, for some of the more common platforms that are in the market today, things like maybe you have data on an Ag Leader Insight or an Ag Leader Edge or an Ag Leader Versa or an Ag Leader Integra or an Ag Leader In Command. Any of those, the more common platforms that exist in the market, you can see here what we can import from them. And in most cases, it's going to be all the files, the yield, the as applied, the as planted, and the boundary files. We can take all the different types of files that you might have on that monitor. And for most of those, there's going to be a PDF guide here that will walk you through. These are the steps, not only to get it into Climate Field View, but also how to get it out of that monitor. And so these are really helpful, especially if you're a crop consultant or someone that maybe isn't as familiar with these monitors because you've never had to use it in the cab, and this is what I am. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time in the cab, and I don't know what a lot of these monitors look like. But when I work with farmers, it's nice to have these guides because I'm going out on farm to see a guy, and he tells me, hey, I've got Ag Leader Integra monitors in all of my equipment. Well, I personally have never seen an Ag Leader Integra monitor where I've had to interact with it. So when it comes to trying to figure out, hey, how do I get the data out of that monitor, I would be a bit lost. But these PDF guides are really helpful. Let me click on it and show you what it does. So if I click on this PDF guide, it's going to download a little 1 or 2 pager about that Ag Leader Integra monitor that not only tells me how to get things into climate down here at the bottom of the guide, but on the first page of the guide, it has all the step-by-step details of how to get the data out of this monitor that I've personally never laid hands on before. So what I can see here is that, step 1, exporting data from an Ag Leader Integra cab monitor onto a USB, it gives me the steps. Power on the monitor, locate the USB port. It's on the right-hand side of the monitor, and insert a USB drive there, and then push these 3 buttons on the monitor to get the data to transfer to that USB. So it gives us those step-by-step instructions on how to get the data out of the monitor, even if it's a monitor that we really have little to no experience with. So it really helps make that process easy. So I'd highly encourage you to go to Data Inbox, click on that, check your file compatibility link here in the middle of the screen. Once you get there, find the monitor or the software. So these are monitors that we can export data from here at the top. And then and there's a whole bunch of them from all kinds of different brands, Deere and Kloss and Case and Loop, and then we get into some of the software systems, Precision Planting or Mapshots or SST or other third-party software systems that might have data in them and how to export those. But just export the PDF guide or print out the PDF guide for the system that you're going to be moving data from, and that will hopefully make that process pretty easy for you when you do get in the cab or when you do get in front of that software system that you're going to be interacting with. One other thing while I'm on this page, so in addition to exporting all of this as planted, as applied, as harvested, and field boundary data that we can move into Climate Field View, the other thing we can move is soil test data or shape files or prescriptions out of other systems. And so we have a number of supported systems listed here for the soil data, whether it's SMS or SST or Mapshots or Premier Crop or Echelon or EFC or all these different systems where you may have your soil test data today. If you do have gridded soil sample data in one of these systems, these are the little documents that you can use to help you figure out how to get that in the right format to import into FieldView, because you can import that gridded soil sample data into FieldView so you can see a map of that alongside your planting data, alongside your harvest data, and understand at the end of the day how organic matter or how pH levels are impacting yield once you import data and can look at it side by side. So feel free to if you do have gridded soil sample data, follow these directions on how to get it in there. And this one is a little bit more technical in terms of organizing your columns properly. And so if you have any questions or concerns about how to get your soil sample data in, it may be a good idea to call our support team, and they'll be able to, you can either forward the data to them and they can help you format it, or they'll be able to work with you to make sure that it gets formatted properly for importing to the FieldView system. One other thing on this form here is we are beta testing a couple of other file types or things that ways we can import data into FieldView so that we can support more systems that are in the market. So if you have data in any of these formats listed here, if you have AGCO FieldStar files, if you have Flexicoil files, Kinsey Vantage, Raven ADV, RBIN or RAD files, or Trimble FMX or FMD files, those we can import. We've seen it happen successfully. We've been able to make it happen, but there are some nuances to it. And so these are all things where if you have files in these formats and you would like to import those to FieldView, it's probably going to be best to call our support team. They'll work with you to make sure that we get that data into the system properly while we work out make sure that we know all the details of different things that are going to work there. We just haven't had as much experience with these kind of files. So call our support team and they'll be able to help you there. So a lot of really, really useful information here behind this check your file compatibility link when you are on our data inbox page. Okay, what else is on this page? One other useful link on this page is because one of the things when you're importing data, the data has to be zipped. So if I'm taking data out of, say, a John Deere 2630 monitor and I get it on the thumb drive, and I take that thumb drive over to my computer and I plug it in and I can see the folder that has all my data from my John Deere monitor. Well, that folder is what we need to import to data inbox, but before we can import it, before we can import anything to data inbox, you have to zip or compress it. You have to put it into a zip file. And in case you haven't done that before or you're unfamiliar with that process, we have a link here that tells you how to do that. So if you click on how to zip your files, there's going to be a little document here that shows you how you will zip your files depending on what kind of system you are running. So it's pretty easy. Usually you right-click on it and you click either compress or add to zip, but just in case you haven't had experience with that, we have directions on how to do that there as well. Now, one other thing on this page before we get to importing files is what if you have data in My John Deere? If you have data in your My John Deere account and you want to bring that over to Climate Field View, it's a pretty easy process because we have what's called an API with them where those systems can connect from a software perspective, and you don't have to do any exporting and importing. All you have to do is tell the systems, hey, give them the passwords so that they can talk to each other, and the data can then start flowing back and forth. So if you do have My John Deere, I'll show you what it looks like. You can come to this page and say connect an account. And when you say connect an account, it's going to take you to your Climate Field View settings page, where at the bottom we have this connected account section. And you can see in my account it says My John Deere is not connected. Now, I could choose to hit this connect button, and it will take me over to the My John Deere web page where I could put in my username and password. And I don't have a My John Deere account, so I'm not going to do this part of the process here for you today. But if I put in your username and password here and sign in, the next thing it's going to ask me is it's going to say, do you want to connect your My John Deere and your Climate Field View accounts? And as long as you say yes, what's going to happen is it's going to build that bridge between the two systems. And starting from that point forward, any data that is on My John Deere will transfer over to Climate Field View within about 15 minutes. Because every 15 minutes we go and we check, hey, has anything new showed up on My John Deere? And if it's there, we'll pull it over into Climate Field View. So this is a really convenient way to get your data into Field View pretty quickly without having to push many buttons at all. Just connect the accounts. All the old data that's on Climate Field View or on My John Deere will flow over. And then going forward, any new data that shows up into My John Deere will flow over within about 15 minutes of the time that it actually arrives on My John Deere. So feel free to set up that connection if My John Deere is the place where your data lives. Okay, so now for all those other things, let's say we've got all the other systems. We showed a whole bunch of them, whether they're Integra Ag Leader monitors or John Deere monitors or Case monitors or Raven monitors or whatever it is. We had data on a thumb drive and we pulled it over onto our computer, and now that data is zipped and it's sitting on our computer somewhere. How do we import it into Field View? Well, we simply use this Upload File button in the middle of the page. And when we click the Upload File button, it's going to take us to a browser where we can browse our computer, and we can say, okay, well, what is it that we want to import here? And I have a whole bunch of files that I've been working with lately, and this one happens to be a field boundary file. But I can say, hey, this is the file I want to import. It's got a zip extension, so that's why I can see it and I can import it. Again, every file that we import to Field View has to be zipped before we can import it. But this is a zipped field boundary file. I can go ahead and I click Open. It'll say, we're preparing that upload. This is just one single field boundary file, so it'll go pretty quickly. But you'll see that in less than 30 seconds here, it says that upload has been successfully processed and we're ready to go. Now, what happens next is we have to approve that file. So now it's been imported. What it does basically is it sits in a quarantine area. It sits in this area where it says, okay, you imported this data to your system, but I want you to look at it and make sure it's really stuff that you want on your Field View system. And make sure that is something you want before we go ahead and finally show it to you in the system. And we can see all these tabs across the top that say, in parentheses, how many of those files are waiting for us. So I have 14 planting files waiting for me, and I have 43 harvest files waiting for me. And over here, I've got this imported shape file where I can see the field boundary that I just imported. And it says, hey, here's the field name, here's the client name, here's the farm name. I can update these as necessary. I can say, hey, this is BGM Farms client, and this is Brandenburg Farm, whatever it is. I can put my client farm field structure in here as I import it so that I've got that ready to go and everything is right when it shows up in the system. And then it's got this action column that says what it's going to do. It says it's going to import and create a new field, and it's going to call it Costa View Farms 9 North Boundary. Now, that's maybe a bit of a more complicated name than I want this to be, so I can update that here, and I can say, really, this is my 9 North field. And then that will be the field name it gets when it comes into Climate Field View. So you just go through, you import the files, they show up on this review page, this quarantine area where we get to look at them, make any edits that we need to do before it comes into the system, make sure it looks right, and then we just put a check mark next to it, or we can put a check mark at the top to select all the fields that have been ready for import. Click import, and that data will then be live in your Climate account to view on your phone, on your iPad, on your web browser, or anywhere else that you choose to look at your Climate Field View data. So pretty simple to go ahead and import files once you have them on your computer and they're zipped. You click import, you grab the file, you hit open, you review the data, make sure it looks good, and then you go ahead and import it. And the reason we have this review step is just because when let's say you're taking data off of your 2630, your John Deere monitor, and you've got a folder and it's got a whole bunch of fields, planting, harvest, all kinds of data on that thumb drive. And maybe you've done some custom work for a neighbor. You did some custom planting a couple years ago, or you did some custom harvest this last year. When you import that folder full of data, it's going to have everything that 2630 contains. And maybe some of those fields aren't yours, and so you don't want to have those cluttering up your Climate Field View account. So that review step allows you to go through and see all the stuff that came in, and if there's things on there that aren't yours, or they're not fields you farm anymore, or for whatever reason you don't want those fields in your Climate Field View account, that gives you the opportunity to go through and selectively say, yes, I want this field to import, no, I don't want this field to import, and keep your account fairly clean. One other thing that I'll mention, as let's say you take that folder off of the 2630 or the Pro 700 or whatever ag leader monitor you have, and you import it and you put it on the desktop and you're ready to import it to Climate Field View. One thing you don't have to worry about is you do not have to go into the folder of data that you took off the monitor and say, okay, this folder of data contains a whole bunch of stuff. What are the planting files? What are the harvest files? What are the boundary files? Which of these the things in here are machine settings? Let's pull out the pieces that field you need so that we can process it properly. You don't need to worry about that. You can take that entire folder that you get off of the monitor, all the data that came off of it, and import it to Climate Field View, and our system does the parsing. Our system looks at that data and says, okay, this is a planting file. I know what to do with that, so I'm going to import it. And this is a boundary file, and I know what to do with that, so I'm going to import it. And anytime it sees something it doesn't know what to do with, some sort of machine setting or, details of your tractor or something that's in that folder, it doesn't know what to do with that, and it'll leave those out. But you don't need to take the time to go through that folder and try and pull out the relevant pieces. Just zip and import the entire folder, and our system will handle the rest. A couple other notes here on importing data before I finish up here. So for both planting and harvest files, the way that most systems work is that as they're collecting the data, let's say you're in a particular field and you start planting. That planting file is probably not going to be a single file in the system that you collected in, whether it's John Deere or Case or Raven or Ag Leader or whatever. Most of these systems split planting and harvest files into multiple pieces. So in order to see your entire planting map, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You have 5 or 7 or 10 different pieces that when they all stick together, they make up the entire planting file for that field. So if you are importing planting data and you farm 10 fields, when you import that planting data, you're likely to see 100 different planting files that are ready for import. You're going to see that, hey, even though I only have 10 fields, all of a sudden I've got 100 files ready for import. That's pretty normal. And what it looks like is like this. So this is, you can see I have 14 planting files that are ready to go for this particular, and this is one field that I have here. And it's basically, I've got all these different little pieces, and you can see them on the left-hand side, the shape of what they all are. And what would happen is if I was to stick all those together, they're like jigsaw puzzle pieces. They would make up the entire field. So just want to show you that so you're aware of it, that you can say, okay, this isn't that weird. I do have this field. It's got a whole bunch of different pieces. I want to pick all the pieces and have them all import, and that will bring it all together as one. Also, just like on the boundary file where I had the opportunity to edit the client farm field details of that field before I brought it in so it would show up properly in my account, when I'm importing planting or harvest files, I have the option to correct things like the crop or the hybrids that are in that field. So if these values are wrong, instead of importing it and then fixing it, while I'm in the import process, I can go through and say, you know what, this P0801 is the wrong hybrid. It really should be a capital P because, this guy put it in with lowercase b, P, but all my other versions of this have a capital P. So let's make it the right one so it matches. And you can search for it in our database of seed varieties. Keep going here so I can get the right one. And maybe it's actually this P0801AM. So I've got the actual proper hybrid name from the seed catalog. I can update that as necessary. Hit update, and it will go ahead and fix that for me so that when I import it, I have the right hybrid name to do reporting on. You have those options to go ahead and do that as well. So then you hit import, it'll bring all those files in as well. So that said, that's most of what we need to cover, I think, with the importing of data into Climate Field View. When you do import it, you can then go back over to the web page and see those files. Like I imported that new field called 9 North, so I should see it here. And if I zoom over to it, you can, in fact, show up there. I just imported it, but I will pretty quickly, I'll get those field health images for that file start showing up for 2019. And we always load in 3 years of historical field health images for any field you put in the system as well. So I should, and these may not, they have populated already. I can see my images going back 3 years as well. So you can start taking advantage of that field health imagery pretty immediately once you do go ahead and put new field boundaries into the system. Okay, so that is about it, I think, in terms of data inbox. And again, any questions about that and how to use that, please feel free to type those in. But I will move on for the moment to doing our data fixing. And how do we fix data that we've already imported into the system that may be incorrect and needs to be cleaned up so we can get proper reporting? So again, when we're doing data fixing, this also is going to happen on Climate Field View Web. So you go to a web browser. It doesn't have to be on a computer. You could do this on an iPad or a phone. The phone is probably a little bit small and not the ideal place to work with it, but an iPad would probably work. And just go to climate.com. Again, preferably using the Chrome browser. So if you're using an iPad, you can download the Chrome browser on your iPad as well and use that instead of Safari when you're surfing the web. But so go to Google Chrome ideally, log in on www.climate.com, and when you come in again, the page that you see will look like this: a list of your fields on the left-hand side and a map of your fields on the right-hand side. Now, when we want to fix data, where we're going to go is we're going to go up here to Settings in the upper right-hand corner, and we're going to go to the Fix Data option. And if I go to Fix Data, you'll see that we have a couple of different choices that we can make here in terms of fixing the data. And the different choices we can make are pretty much at the top of this page. We have the option of fixing planting files or harvest files. As of today, we don't have any ability to fix as applied files. It's really just planting and harvest for now are the tools that you have access to. If you do have any as applied files that need fixing, I would call our support team and see if they might be able to help you with some of that. But we can fix planting or harvest files, and then we can also choose what year we want to fix. And you can fix, it's not that you can just fix last year's data. if you are that person who has uploaded data back to 1996 and you want to go ahead and get it right and make sure that those records are correct, you can fix that data back in 1996. Anything you've uploaded to the system is available to be fixed if it's a planting or a harvest file. Now, let me pick, I was looking at this earlier. I think I've got a bunch of data here in 16 or 15. Let me pick a year here. Yeah, so I'm going to pick the 2016 year, and you can see that a whole bunch of data shows up here at the bottom of the page. It shows me the fields that have data, where the data came from. Was it upload? Was it from a 2020? Was it FieldView Drive? You know, where the data come from? What crop was in the field? What date was the data collected? And what hybrids did we have showing as the hybrids in those fields? So what can we fix? Well, we can fix a couple of things. I'm going to just go ahead and check this box on the left-hand side of the page to select all the fields that had data in 2016. And then I'm going to click this Edit button on the right-hand side of the page. And then it shows me, okay, what do we want to fix in all these fields? We can either fix the crop, where we could say, hey, you know what? That was actually a cornfield, and somehow I got it collected as a soybean field because I forgot to change the header on the that was showing on the screen, and so it had the raw or the hybrid that was in the planter. And you can fix the crop type if you need to here. But more frequently, what we need to fix is the hybrid. That, hey, we've had the same hybrid, and it's got 6 different names in our system because one guy typed it in with a space, one guy typed it in with a dash, one guy typed it in with lowercase letters, and the other guy typed it in with uppercase letters, and it's all the same hybrid. And so what we want to do is we want to get that hybrid name consistent so we can run reports and understand hybrid performance where the climate field system knows that all these are actually the same hybrid, even though, you know, we spelled it 5 different ways. This is the place to fix that up. So if I go in here to hybrid, I can then say, okay, well, let's look at all the corn hybrids in our system, and what is the hybrid name as it's written in field view that I want to fix? And when I do this little drop down here, it's going to show me every hybrid name that was used that year. And as you can see, I've got a bit of a mess in my hybrid names here. I've got, you know, this 6487 2.5, 6487 3, 6487 2.0. I've got these little tags at the end of my hybrid names that probably meant something at the time of collection, but maybe there's a better way to do this going forward. Or some of these, like, here's with quick roots, and here's 5138 without quick roots. Well, now we have the ability to do some of these things where we can tag seed treatments separately, and so maybe we don't want to have these kind of seed treatments tagged onto the end of the hybrid name where it's, you know, kind of causing the same hybrid to be reported in 2 different ways. So you got a lot of different things that you can do here. And, you know, here's the 19768 with 6-gallon starter, with starter, and with no starter. So you got 3 different ways of doing the same hybrid. Well, if we have the as-applied map with the starter, we don't need to have this in the hybrid name because we can always look at the starter map and see where we did more, where we did less, and where we did none. So we don't need these tags here. But essentially, you just go through here and you say, okay, this is a hybrid that I want to rename. Anything that says 19677 with starter, I want to get rid of that, and I want it to be standardized with this 19677 stacks rib. So I click on the one that I want to fix, and then I start typing in the hybrid that I really want it to be called. I say it's 19677. Let's see if I can find it in here. Stacks rib. This is what I want it to be called. And any place that it says I have 19677 with starter, I'm going to replace it with 19677 stacks rib. Just hit replace, and it will apply those changes. And every place that hybrid existed, it will fix that name to the new one that I've said I want it to be. So pretty simple to come in here, just say, let's fix the entire year, all of my 2016 data. I want to fix the hybrid. I want to fix my corn hybrid, and find the name in this list, because this list is going to show every hybrid name that currently exists for your 2016 season, and say, hey, this is one that I want to fix. And what do I want it to be? Just start typing a variety name or a hybrid name. It will find it in our seed catalog. It will give you the official legal name of that hybrid so that you get standardization across your operation, and things will clean up pretty quickly here. So take advantage of some of this rainy weather that you may be having, and instead of just waiting it out, hopefully you can accomplish something useful by cleaning up some of your data that exists in your FieldView account today. using these fix-it files or fix-it tools. Okay, again, any questions about that, please feel free to type them in. But one other thing I want to show you, let me go back to my field view page. Another thing that we can fix up here in terms of data that maybe is collected incorrectly, let me show you an example. This is a field where, and some of you this may look familiar when I get to it. See if we can get this to load here. But this is a field where, it's not loading. Here we go. Let's try it again. LaRue, there it is. So this field, you can see that I've got my harvest data for 2018 here. So harvest of the field looks pretty good. But if I zoom out, what I see on this field is that not only do I have harvest data for this field here, but I've also got harvest data for a neighboring field in the LaRue field harvest data. So what happened here? This may have happened on some of your farms before, but essentially the operator of the combine, he harvested the LaRue field, and then he drove down the road and he started harvesting that other field to the southwest of it. And he forgot to change the active field in either the 2020 or with the field view plus in the cab. And so what happened is now we've got harvest data that is associated with LaRue field, but it really should be in a different field. So how do we get that data to go where it belongs? Well, we have tools to do that. So let me show you how this works. So LaRue 2018 wheat is the data that we need to fix. So I'm going to go over to settings and fix data. And I'm looking for my 2018 wheat harvest file. So at the top, I'm going to choose harvest files. And then I'm going to choose 2018 as my year, so that's right. Then I'm going to find the LaRue field. So let me find my LaRue field in my list. Here it is, the wheat data. And what I can do here when I check that field is that's the harvest data that needs to be fixed. I can use this reprocess spatially button. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, you've told me that this is a field that we need to look at the GPS coordinates associated with each of those data points and figure out where it really belongs. So what will happen is we'll take all of the data that is currently associated with LaRue harvest, take it out of field view, and then we'll look at the GPS coordinates associated with each of the data chunks in there, and we'll say, where does it belong? And the stuff that belongs in LaRue, well, it will go right back into LaRue field. But that other stuff from the field in the southwest, we'll look at it and we'll say, hey, this does not fit in the LaRue field boundary, so where does it go? And hopefully there's a field boundary already in our system that it does belong in, and we'll put it into the proper field boundary. So the one thing I would recommend before you do a reprocess spatially is make sure your field boundaries are right and that there is a field boundary that exists in your system for that data to go in, that field has been defined and the field boundary is good. But when you do that, you hit reprocess spatially, takes all the data out, and then it puts it all back in based on which field boundary it should belong to. So it's a quick and easy way to clean this up. The one thing there's two things I'll mention about this. Number one, when it takes the data out and puts it back in, you're not going to see it show up in your climate field view count automatically. When it takes it out and puts it back in, it's going to put it into the data inbox, into that quarantine area where you'll get a chance to review it before it shows up in your climate account. So you hit reprocess spatially. It may take an hour to do, or 30 minutes to do all this stuff. And then you have to go to data inbox to review it and say, yes, I do in fact want this data to come back in the way that it has been reprocessed. So you will have to go to data inbox to import it. Secondly, the data does, every single harvest data point is not analyzed individually. As I talked about with the planting and the harvest files, when those files come in, it's usually in chunks. You know, you might have a field, and it's that jigsaw puzzle concept where an individual 80-acre field may have 10 different pieces associated with it. And basically each piece is going to get analyzed. And we're going to put that piece into the field boundary where the largest portion of that data exists. So we can't, if the two fields are right next to each other, sometimes we can't get the split exactly right by reprocessing spatially, but it should be better. It will be no worse than it was when you did it the first time. So feel free to reprocess spatially. We may not get the split exact in terms of putting each individual foot of data into the exact right field, especially if they're next to each other, but we'll split it where we can based on those chunks of data that exist in the system. So feel free to use this reprocess spatially function to take care of things where your operator may have forgotten to switch the active field, and you've got multiple fields of data in one associated with one field. Pretty useful tool there. The last thing about any questions about this, please feel free again. Go ahead and send those in via chat, and I'll answer those here in just a minute when I wrap this up. But the last thing that I want to cover here in terms of fixing data is just how do you update your field boundaries where you may have, there's a variety of reasons why your field boundaries in field view may not be accurate. And for those fields that already exist, I do want to show you there's some pretty simple tools to clean those up. And there's good reason to do this, especially around the field health images. If you've got field boundaries that include, the homestead, or they include a road that goes through the field, or a drainage ditch, you get some weird colors in your field health images that may throw off the whole system in terms of being able to understand, where your good and bad parts of the field are. You want to have your field boundaries be as clean as possible, where they're not covering any roads, no houses are included in the field area, and really the field area is just the planted acres. And so we have some tools to help clean that up. And so in case you do have field boundaries that are incorrect, the best place to fix this is at a computer where you have access to a mouse, so you can be more precise with your field boundary definitions. But go to climate.com, as I am here, on a computer ideally, in the Google Chrome web browser. And when you go into the page, you can click this Edit Fields button here in the top left. And when you click Edit Fields, a little blue notepad with a pen shows up on the right-hand side of each of our fields. And I can go ahead and select any of these. Like, I think I've got a field down here that I had a little bit of a messed up boundary on, or did I? Let me see if no, these all look pretty good. So I'll just have to make something up. Let's try this Scott's field. So I pull into a field, and this is the current field boundary as it's listed in my system. And this doesn't look quite right. So I could go ahead and fix this. And the way that we fix this is you come to the field, and you can see all these little white dots. All these little white dots are draggable. You can move them to wherever you need them to be. And anytime I click on a big white one, it goes away. It simplifies the shape. And anytime I click on a little white one, I can use that to create a new vertex and drag that to some part of the field where I want it to be. So you can go ahead and you can create all kinds of shapes in here by dragging these around and putting them wherever you want them to be to create the proper field shape if you have incorrect field boundaries in your system. So do take a look through your fields, and anything that doesn't look right, come to a web browser and use these edit tools to drag those around. There are some additional tools in here where we can make this even more precise, where let's say like this is a field with a pivot, and maybe we've got a road leading out to the center pivot, and we want to remove that from the system. There's remove tools where we can take polygon out of the middle. Like if I've got a clump of trees in the middle of this field, I can see it in the map, and I can say, I've got this area of trees here that I want to remove, and just draw a shape, and it'll cut that out of the middle of the field. I've also got tools like removing a waterways or a road, where I can say, here through this part of the field, I've got a road that goes out to the center pivot. Click the last dot a final time to make it final. And then how wide is that road? It's 25 feet wide. Hit done. It's going to cut a little section out of the map there that is 25 feet wide to make that boundary more precise. And it'll update the acreage appropriately on the left-hand side of the page. So a lot of tools here to remove things, to make it the way you need it to, or draw in things that you need to do using these tools of dragging the vertices around. So do take the time to clean up your field boundaries. Again, we can take advantage of this unfortunate rainy weather that we're getting in a lot of the country to make sure that our field boundaries are as good as possible before we get to the field and get things planted. So we'll be ready to go for the season. But wanted to show you how those tools work. I think that's about it for today. So that covered how to use Data Inbox, how to use some of the Fix-It tools for data, how to use some of the Fix-It tools for field boundaries. And I think that's most of what I'm going to take the time to cover today. So I hope that was helpful. Let me go ahead and get out of this and see if any questions have been submitted. Stop sharing. Okay, it looks like a couple of questions might have come in. And while I answer those, just a couple of other things for you. First, if you enjoyed this webinar and want to learn more on other FieldView topics, the new place we go for that is climate.com/events. The page looks something like what you see there. I imagine all of you found it because you registered for this webinar. There's one more webinar here in May, and I should go ahead and I'll be posting June webinar dates and times and topics here in the coming days. So look for some June dates on that webpage to come. And then lastly, in terms of what's next, find and zip your historical data files wherever they may live on your farm and import those via data inbox. Fix your old data using these tools that we just showed, and fix your field boundaries so that everything is as clean and accurate as possible. And if you have questions about things, our climate support team is fantastic. These are people in our St. Louis office. They speak English. They are people with agricultural backgrounds, and they will help you get to what you need. Myself, I have a very simple email address of jeff@climate.com. I travel a lot, and I'm not nearly as easy to reach as the support people, but if there's something that I can help you with, I do really enjoy working with our farmers, with our dealers, with the folks that are using the FieldView platform. And so do feel free to drop me a note if there's anything I can help you with, and I will try and point you in the right direction. Okay, that's it. Questions. Let me get to these. One from Kevin here. So just to verify, with the My John Deere API, it will pull historical data that is already in My John Deere, or will it only pull the new files as they come in? Yes, Kevin, it will pull the old historical data as well in most cases. I forget exactly how the My John Deere system is set up, but there's something, I think there's something called an archive in there, and then there's something that has like other, more current data. We pull the data from one of those sections. So connect to My John Deere, give it an hour or so just to make sure. I mean, we should pull data every 15 minutes, but if you've got a lot of data, it might take a while for it to all show up. But what will happen is connect to My John Deere, give it some time, and then look at your data inbox. When you connect to My John Deere, the data is not going to show up automatically in FieldView. It's going to go through that quarantine process where it's going to say, hey, you said you wanted to import this data, but I want you to look at it first before I just shove it all into your account, because again, maybe it's custom work you did for someone. Maybe these are fields that you don't farm anymore. We're going to give you that chance to review it. So look at your data inbox on climate.com and see what's there. And if things aren't showing up that you would expect to show up, give our support team a call, and it may be that situation where you need to move the data from one part of My John Deere to another in order for us to see it. So, but in general, yes, it should pull the historical data and any new data going forward. A question from John about does that work for spray applications as well? Not a lot. I don't know, John. I lost track of what I was talking about at the time that you asked this question, so I'm not sure what you're asking about. Does it work? If it's fixed data, no. Fixed data tools are only for planting and harvest at the moment. If you have spray applications where you had the wrong chemical name or something that needs to be fixed in one of your spray applications, that's something you would have to call our support team and see if they can help you with. Right now, the fix-it tools only allow you to fix planting and harvest files. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking about, but I think it probably is. Question here from Dustin. I've got a farmer who has 5 or 6 separate fields all in one section. He wants to plant them all to the same variety, but still have the separate field boundaries at the end of the season. How can we do that? So basically, he's going to go through this big section and plant it all at one time. But he wants to have it split up into 5 or 6 different sections. The best way to do that is to, instead of defining one field in that section, Dustin, is define 5 or 6 separate field boundaries. So you have it split up the way that he wants it to be split up. And then as he plants, the cab app has an option to put auto boundary detect on the planter if he's using our cab app for planting. So if he's using the 2020 or the Drive for planting, and he sets his boundary detection to auto, as he goes through that field and reaches each of those field boundaries, the field name will switch automatically so that his planting data is captured properly. So it's one big section. He just keeps going on planting, and it'll just flip as he gets to each of those fields and capture it in the right parts, as long as those field boundaries are correct, and as long as he has auto boundary detection set on. And if you have any questions about how to get that auto boundary detection set on or to make sure that's working correctly, give our support team a call and they'll be able to kind of walk you through that. Question from John. So the spray data question about does it work for spray applications as well? The question was about the reprocess spatially function. No, as of today, the reprocess spatially, that thing where we take the data out and we put it in the right spot, that only works on the farmer-facing tools for planting and harvest data. So if you have spray data where the guy forgot to change the active field and you've got spray data spread across multiple fields that really needs to be split up a bit, again, call our support team. They have access to additional tools that some of that the typical farmer does not, and they may be able to help you. I'm not sure on that one, but give them a call and see if they can do that. Question here from Ann. I want to fix a hybrid. It shows as unknown, but it was a split planter. Can I put two hybrids into the fix-it tool to replace unknown? No, unfortunately, Ann, that's a limitation at the moment. So the way that the fix-it tool works on hybrids or varieties is you can take any existing hybrid or variety that currently exists in your system and you can replace it with another. But what we can't do is say, hey, this hybrid, anywhere it exists, I want it to be either X or Y. I want it to be one of these two. We just don't have the tools. The tool that we've created is not complex enough to be able to say, hey, I want it to be two different varieties and I want it to split on this row with this one on the right half and this one on the left half. Because then we'd also have to look at planter direction and be able to understand which way the planter was traveling at that time to be able to figure out which hybrid goes on which side. And we just haven't built a tool that is capable of that level of complexity at the moment, unfortunately. Certainly something that we may be looking at in the future, but that's going to be a bit of an engineering task to build something that is both easy to use for the farmer and something that can accomplish that task. So for the moment, anytime we're fixing hybrids, the only option we have is to say, whatever it is today, change it to something else. Not, unfortunately, whatever it is today, change it to these two things based on these rules. Okay, so I think, I don't see, oh, wait, there might be one more here. Question here about if a field is shared with you, do you have the ability to edit the data, or is it just the grower who can make the changes? Yeah, so shared fields, you do have the ability to edit those varieties in the web. I'm almost certain. I'm trying to think if that's the case. I'm pretty sure that's the case, Cassidy, that you can edit those shared fields, and that's really something intentional because we want those. If you share with your dealer, a farmer shared with their dealer, or they shared with their their agronomist. That agronomist may actually know the details there and be the one who is going to be doing this data cleanup or fixing things that are wrong. So, yeah, as a shared participant, you should be able to fix that data, I believe. Another question here, is there a data layer that we can add to the spray applications for weather, recording wind direction, temperature, etc.? Yes, there is. I've got time here. If folks have to run, certainly feel free, but let me see if I can just show you, John, where this happens while we're on the phone here to take advantage of the time. Let me see if I can get my iPad to display on the screen. I can show you this. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Just a second here. I'm going to share my iPad. Factor 2. That didn't work. I don't think it did. Cancel. Okay, let me try this again. Why is it not showing up for me? You guys might be able to see my iPad, but right now I'm having a hard time doing it. Something's not connecting right, so let me try quitting this. Why is it doing that? I don't know. Can you guys see my iPad right now? You might be able to. Do you see my iPad screen? I can't tell if it's showing up on your screen. If you want to chat in quickly, if you see my iPad screen, that might help me out here. Why can't I? No, it doesn't look like you guys can see it. Okay, so let me try this once more. Let's quit that application. See if I can make this technology work. Give me 1 second. Open. Okay. I think this is going to work now. Sorry for that. I think I'm almost there. I wasn't planning on showing my iPad today, but now since this question came up. Okay. I think you guys can see this now, my iPad. And I'm going to go into the CAB app. And the question was about, can we take records of, wedding. Oh, I need a CAB app update. I'll do that later. Can we take records of weather conditions or other details that might have happened while we were doing a spray application? And yes, the CAB app gives you the ability to do this kind of stuff. So in the CAB app, if I go over to map and I pick a field that has a spray application, I think I've got a few in here that have some spray applications. Town line and middle. Instead of the yield map at the top here, I'm going to choose my in-season and say, here's one of my spray applications. Actually, I think what I want to do is, so pick any of my spray applications and pick any of my spray applications maps. On this page, once I've got a spray map up on the CAB app, I can use the button next to the house. There's a little arrow to the left of the house. And there, I can see an application summary for that particular application. When I do that, I have these details about, okay, well, what was my, total gallons, my seed, my acres. I've got my products in there, their EPA registration numbers, the rates and the amounts. I can put in the information about what piece of equipment did it, what the operator was, and what his license number was, total gallons applied. And then I've got this section here where I can put the information in here for whether it start and whether it end. Now, if I had a cell connection in the field at the time that the spray application was done, it would have collected this data automatically. So anyone that's using Climate Field View Drive while they're in the sprayer and they have a data connection in the field will get automatic population of temperature, wind speed, and wind direction from the nearest weather station. Now, that weather station might be 20 miles away, it might be 50 miles away, it might be 2 miles away, but it'd be from the nearest public weather station that we have data access to. And so we populate with the values that that system was providing. But obviously, the weather conditions in your field may be different. So you always have the option to come in here and override those values using this editing function that we're seeing right here. So you finish spraying the field, you come to this report, and it says that, hey, the wind was 6 miles an hour out of the southeast, but your records that you took in the field at the time of spraying said it was 4 miles an hour out of the south. You can come in here and edit it to be whatever you know it was in that field. But in this case, the weather data wasn't collected at spraying, so I can just come in here and say, you know what, I can put the values in. It was 72 degrees when I did this application, wind speed was 5 miles an hour, and it was out of the south. And at the end, it was, we were at 74 degrees, and it was a 6 mile an hour wind out of the southeast. So you can put in those values to add those to a weather report, and then, or to a spray report, and then for any other note, whether it's a planting map, a harvest map, a spray map, for anything, you always have this application note section where you can put in any additional details that you want to remember and be aware of. You can say, hey, started cloudy and was sunny at the end, or whatever, cloudy and cleared up when I got to the south half of the field, or whatever. You can put in whatever notes you need. And once you do that, and you've got all this data in here correct, you can use this Create Map PDF button at the top to create a nicely formatted document that has all the details. Here's the field. Details in the upper right-hand corner. It was this Roundup application. It was applied June 12th between 8:20 a.m. and 12:53 p.m. To soybeans that were planted on May 24th of 2018. Here's the as-applied map. Here's the products that went on. Here's the equipment and the operator. There's the details of how many gallons were applied. And here's my weather summary along with the application notes that I took. So it's a nice way to get everything in one place. And then I can hit email or print in the upper right-hand corner to send this off via email or a text message or whoever to whoever needs to know about it so they can have that record available for them. So hopefully that answers the question there in terms of some of the ways that you can collect weather data and other notes associated with really planting, harvest, or spray files. So I will close that and see if there's any other questions that have come in. Okay. Okay, one other thing here from Kyle. The weather data in this report is not what showed up in the metrics pane for a field that I sprayed. I'm not sure what weather data would be showing up in the metrics pane or how that would differ. I think it would. I'm sure all the data that's in the CAB app comes from the same place. So Kyle, if there's a particular question or something that you're seeing that doesn't seem right, that the report weather data is different than what you were seeing in real time as you were in the field, that's probably something I would talk to support about. I'm not sure why there would be any discrepancy there. Those should be sourced from the same locations. Okay, it looks like those are all the questions that have come in. So thanks everyone for taking the time to join. I hope this was helpful. I hope the weather gets better for you wherever you are, and whatever better means for you. For most of us, I think it means less rain, but if you need rain, hopefully you can get that as well. And certainly look forward to working with everyone through the season, and best of luck, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks, everyone.